Welcome to the devlog for Milo. I'm going to just jump right into it. This week has been cool. I've done a lot of work on uh, network replication, trying to learn learn more about that. Um, and I'll kind of show you sort of the problems that I run into and the progress that I've made in the past week. So let me make sure you can see okay. Yeah, that looks all right. Um, so I've added a few sounds. I don't know how well that's going to translate into the video, but got some out of the can sound effects that I got from a tutorial, and I really dove into implementing first person as a real part of this game. I decided last week that it was just going to be so worth it to just put in the extra work to make this game first person, at least compatible with it, because every single time I played the game, um, and I toggled first person, I had like a debug reason for doing it or something. It always just felt way better. And finally, it was just time, and I just dove into it. It's a lot more work, but it's definitely worth it. And part of the reason it's more work is because when you do stuff in first person, there has to be another representation of your character to other players. Um, and not only that, the gun in first person is in a different position than the gun in third person. So the animations and the effects have to be sort of doled out to, especially when you're dealing with like online multiplayer and stuff, they have to be constructed in a way that's not too expensive, data wise, on bandwidth, and also it's hard to even like know where to begin, because it's honestly like it's really easy to just get all of your wires crossed. So it does feel like sometimes you're just moving it an inch forward at a time, but I'm pretty pleased with what I've been able to accomplish in the past week, and I'll show you kind of some of the challenges, some of the things that are happening. Like for instance, this is the what you're seeing in first person. These arms, and of course, invisible to you, the player, is also the third person mesh. The other players can see that. So there's a lot of sort of weird moving parts, but it's cool. It's fun to play around with, and it's starting to come together. The third person stuff is really mostly done in blueprints right now. As in, like, I've added these in the the Unreal editor, where the original weapon code that I redesigned from the tutorial that I was using is coming from a C++ class. And I think once I sort of have a better idea of how I'm going to implement this and kind of see like some of the pitfalls, I'll be migrating this to C++ at some point, just for security reasons, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. Basically, like, when it's coming from C++, and the class, it's all coded into the class, and the stuff in blueprints, for the most part, inherits from that, then I feel a lot more secure, and it's a lot harder to mess stuff up when it's coded into C++. So one of the things, and obviously if you haven't noticed already, on the docket is getting the fire effects right. You can see on the right screen, when I fire, there's a muzzle flash on the muzzle of the gun and above the gun. And the muzzle flash that's happening above the gun is where the third person gun is in 3D space, but it's just hidden to the first person player. And there's different ways to do almost anything, but I am interested in sort of the best practices. And because of my lack of experience, it does require a lot of research and a lot of fine tuning, a lot of experimentation. But this is definitely a victory, because you can see other players. It's not emulating the an internet connection, but I've already tested that a while ago, and that I got that to work. And I'll be doing more testing with that in the future, but this is simulating, this is the server, and this is the client. And you might be thinking like, well, okay, what's the difference of if it's not on the internet or whatever? Well, the difference is that this is it's sort of not simulating the internet or connection or whatever, but it's more simulating the way the net authority is like doled out to different parts of the game. Like some functions in the game can only execute on the server because they're so important, and you can't really trust a client, like someone running a client on the game is connected to a server to run certain things like damage to other players or damage to zombies or ammo. You wouldn't want people to just be editing stuff and adding as much ammo or giving them like 1,000,000 damage per hit or whatever. So that's why I am running this into Windows, is because I need to know how the server is communicating to the clients. And if the clients are running things on their end that need to be replicated to other clients in the server, then I need to know kind of how that flow of information is. So I'll tend to, especially when I'm debugging like things like network authority and whatnot, I'll kind of go back and forth between running 2 and 3 instances of the game. And because now I've got one server and 2 clients running, and I kind of just want to make sure that everything's squared away. Is sort of what I expect to see. Another thing that I think that took me a while to find a solution, and there's a much simpler solution that I implemented, but it's replicating this aim offset. When the character actually moves their what they call the control rotation. You know what? Let me just run one here, and I'll run 2. When you actually like change your rotation in 3D space, you can see the character's arms actually moving, and that has to be designed in a type of file that Unreal Engine has called aim offset. And it basically just takes the rotation, the control rotation, and kind of creates like a blend. It's like a blend shape or a blend space, or whatever you call it if you're into like 3D stuff. And it just kind of is a really cool thing that they have that's already implemented, where you can create a really awesome aim offset. Of course, the one I have right now looks pretty poopy, but I know why that is, and I didn't bother kind of fine-tuning it just because I was wanting to make sure the other things would work before I revisited that. So it's going to look a lot more naturalistic, I guess, and fluid once it's fully implemented. And of course, the fire effects that are happening in third person are looking pretty good. You know, they've got a nice, shell casings dropping. We've got some. They actually drop on the floor. It's funny because like if you're in first person, they actually drop twice. So. Oh, and then there's also this. I'm out of ammo, and I'm still clicking the fire button, and it's still firing out from the muzzle flash above. And I know why that's doing that right now. And it's just going to take some time to iron out some of the kinks. You know, it's funny, like some things really I just never really expected to be as intense, and requiring so much like thought and and time. Because I've been playing video games my whole life, and I'm very familiar with kind of the way games function from a player's perspective. But as I get more into this, I'm pretty I'm sometimes pretty amused at the kind of stuff that I have to spend a long time thinking about. And if I didn't have Unreal Engine, I mean the list would be way bigger, because so many things are incredibly require a lot of thought. But luckily there's just so much material out there, and people have made it a lot easier for people like me to kind of dive in and make their own game without having to code my own engine or stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. It's a blast. So yeah, I mean, the cosmetic stuff I haven't really spent a lot of time on. Well, I shouldn't say that, because the first person last week looked like pretty rough, and it still does to some extent. But I'll sort of show off kind of what I've accomplished just in first person. This pistol I did, and the animations, the particle effects, the smoke trailing out of the gun. You can see there's actually there's muzzle smoke trails. There's breath. That's pretty new, and that's can be tweaked. So when I fire, there's kind of a delay, and then the heat from the bullet creates a little burst of smoke or steam or whatever. And the gun cocks back when you fire until you run out of ammo, and smoke actually comes out of the chamber. And of course, that's only gonna run once, but it's good to have that like this right now, so it creates the smoke every time, just for while I'm designing it. And then when you run out of ammo, and the I don't know what I'm calling this the jam. I don't know why, because I don't know exactly what it is. But when the gun's jammed like this, you have to reload. And then it plays a little animation, and there's a delay, and then you can start firing again. Now the cool part about the ammo is that the ammo is, as far as I know, I spent some time on this, and I believe I'll probably have to verify this, but I believe it's executing on the server. So when the player fires, it has to go through the server to validate that, and then the ammo goes down. Um, and that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about players not on their own client not being able to, adjust their ammo or whatever. So that was pretty cool too, because I haven't really done something that intense with network authority and C++ independently until then. So I'm happy that worked. Of course, the reload function is not it does not apply to that. So right now I'm not confident that people playing this on just a client, connected to a server, couldn't find a way to just spam the reload button, when they run out of ammo, and giving themselves, making themselves reload 500 times and giving them a bunch of ammo. You know what I mean? So I'll have to address that. It very much is like kind of like a game of whack-a-mole. Game development, because there's kind of a seemingly endless amount of things to do, especially when you're a one man team. I don't know. It always just sounds so dumb. When you're doing it yourself, like you're really responsible for everything. So I try not to get too hung up on stuff, but it never fails. Like things just, you put out one fire and then it's like, oh shoot, now this is happening. But it's part of the fun too, because without that, it wouldn't be as exciting and unpredictable, and it wouldn't give me a chance to hop around to different things and be surprised by what happens in development. And I've talked about that quite a few times, just in terms of like, what I expect from this game. I have some expectations and definitely like a direction, but I'm totally open to being surprised, and I frequently am. It's one of the more fun parts about doing this. So when I look at the this animation montage, which is something I've gotten into recently. This is basically a file that kind of contains a bunch of animations that I can call from the blueprints or from C++. And if I look at kind of what one of those nodes look like, it just looks like this, or I'm sorry, like this. It's just a simple node, and it's got a few inputs. And this is kind of the really appealing part about montages, is this section. You can sort of specify which section of the montage you want to play. And when I open up the montage like this and you look in the timeline, you can actually see, let me make this a little bit bigger. You can actually see like, different little tags, and those things can be, called and adjusted as needed, instead of just having a whole bunch of different animations. So this is my fire animation. This is sort of my idle. This is the jam I was telling you about, which is really just one frame of an animation. And then a rudimentary reload, which I kind of, which I did this week. Of course, there's some sounds and particle effects that are linked to it. In addition to that montage, it didn't stop there, because sure, you can have a gun that kind of fires and ejects a shell casing and has a muzzle flash and has a reload animation and whatnot. But what would it look like if the action of the gun didn't respond to the player? So I had to dive into the first person hands, what I did first. And let's see here, let's get a montage. Here we go. And here we've got a nice animation montage with the way the player's hands and arm react to the firing. So this is a lot of back and forth of, you know, playing it, looking at it, because I don't have a lot of experience with 3D animation, but I do have quite a bit of experience with animation, just generally speaking. I've done, you know, projects here and there in the past, and it's a very fun process, and it's very time consuming, and a lot of it just involves going back and looking at it and then pressing play, going back, and just sort of obsessively trying to get kind of what you want. And these aren't like incredible animations, obviously, because a lot of the time I've spent is just orienting myself to 3D animation more and getting used to editing animations within the UE4 editor. But I'm finding a result that I like. And just to give you an idea of kind of what it looks like, again, when I go into the game, you know, you get a nice kind of popping back, and the wrist kind of kicks back too, and you know, the shell flies out. So there's a lot to build on here. And the pistol mesh that looks like this is there's a lot to build on here too, you know, and it's not I hardly got a chance to spend any time on this. I got it from a free pack, and then I edited it, because it had a too high poly count, and I'll be redesigning this and, you know, adding to it and whatnot. So it's entirely mine. But it's like one of those things you sort of you sort of learn doing this process, is like, you know, art's a incredibly valuable part of this process, but it's not something I'm too worried about being able to accomplish, because that's my background. So I just took this and kind of, it was quick and dirty, and yeah, I'm happy with it. I can't wait to change this texture too, because this is like, ugh. And get some color variation, get a clip, you know, falling out of the bottom of the gun, and spruce up this animation of the hand, you know, sliding it back in, and getting some cool sound effects, maybe, you know, doing my own sound effects. You know, the possibilities are just insane. But I don't know if this is 3 months of development or 2.5 or 2 months and 3 weeks. I gotta double check, but approaching 3 months of development, if we're not already there. And this has been an incredible experience. And for those of you who don't know who I am, or if you're watching this and you're sort of curious about this, I had next to no game development experience. Certainly no real programming experience. What I do have in terms of game development experiences, I was an artist working on a mod for Crusader Kings 3 called Godherja, and that was kind of my my introduction into what it means to be an artist for games, and kind of starting to flirt with technical art and a little bit of, I wouldn't say programming, but I was like editing, I think they were JSON files or something. I was editing settings files and just kind of like getting used to looking at blocks of words that didn't make intuitive sense, and just trying to you're just forcing yourself to like sit down and kind of figure it out, and running tests. And but that was a really good experience for me too, that sort of, I think, primed me for making this grand leap into just making my own video game, because it was kind of a sudden decision where I was just like, okay, well, I was kind of messing around in Unreal, and I was working on another project actually, and for a variety of reasons, I think it just hit me, and I just decided, what, I'm gonna make my own video game, and I'm just gonna learn how to do this. And it's fun, it's I feel very fortunate that there's so many resources out there. It didn't used to be like that. If you wanted to be a independent, develop a game independently, and publish it, or stuff like that, you had to have a really strong background in computer science, and like be able to, like, people used to code their own engines and stuff like that. And I have a lot to learn about that, but I wouldn't be able to do this with such in this amount of time if it weren't for all the men and women and whatnot who've been working on this type of stuff for years. So that's just a little pep talk to anyone who's watching this, thinking like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I don't have education or on this or whatever. It's like, well, I don't either. Codeacademy.com, and a couple like $15 tutorials on Udemy, and a lot of time, and you'll be on your way. The flashlight is also an issue, and just light in general is something that I have a lot to learn about. Right now I kind of have a trailing light that follows me. That way, nothing gets too dark. And this is way too bright. And for that, so is the flashlight, for that matter. And I don't know what the solution will be, but it'll probably look like something like, the distance between the light and certain surfaces, creates a fraction of the light's intensity as you get closer. Or maybe it might be, some other solution. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what'll happen, but it's also, another thing is the gun going through the wall. You notice, you take it for granted, or at least I do, when I play first-person shooters, is like your gun never goes through the wall, because that's just something that people have figured out, and I haven't yet. But there are resources for it, and I guess it has to do with rendering it on a different layer, like, because the engine actually renders things in like different passes, or can, and if you do it on a different pass, then all of a sudden it's rendered, and then it's, things like this won't happen. So add that to the list of things I know nothing about. And I've done this whole video and I haven't said a word about zombies, and that's because these zombies are taking a long nap, and they're just pooped. So I've given them a break this week for the most part. But they will, I'll return to them and kind of fix up their AI so that they don't totally stink. But yeah, I guess that's probably pretty much it. This week I think I'll be working on if this past week is any indication, I'll probably be doing a little bit more network authority type stuff, multiplayer implementations of different things. And I will probably get into a few cosmetic things, not but we'll see. One vision I had for the game was, I know I said I was going to end, but I guess I'll just end with this one. One vision I had for the game is having kind of a neon room, or room with a lot of neon lights and visuals, like a casino. For some reason, that sort of the image of a video arcade or casino is really really keeps coming back into my mind, and it wouldn't be like a totally intact one. It would be sort of like a rundown one, but it would have some kind of just kind of that. I mean, you can just picture it yourself. Just when you see a neon sign or something, it just has it's a very specific quality, and I kind of am in the back of my mind trying to figure out how I can implement something like that in the game, technically and just sort of visually, and maybe incorporate stuff like like a slot machine. I've mentioned that before, or some sort of like game within a game type of mechanics. So I stumbled on some really cool resources on textures.com, which I've been using, which really just gives me a lot of photo reference that I can use to manipulate and build textures in Substance Painter. So I might show off some of the stuff that I found, and maybe some of the stuff that I've been working on with respect to that. So, but yeah, that's it. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Love you.